Hello, this is the weekly Tradecast. I'm Sarah Toms. All this year, we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of UN trade and development with a series of special episodes on the big themes that drive our work and transform people's lives around the world. Coming up now.
The Summit of the Future is an opportunity to build trust in the multilateral system, but also to create hope that we can do things different and better for the populations of the world.
This week we're looking at the UN Summit of the Future and how any hopes for sustainable and inclusive development depend on us making fundamental changes in how we think and act. Since 1964, when UN trade and development was created, the world has seen huge transformations of economies, technologies and societies. To meet our new realities, world leaders at this week's Summit of the Future will be shaping how we recover from multiple crises now and create greener, more inclusive progress for generations to come. Leading into the summit, UN Trade and Development's anniversary event, the Global Leaders Forum, shared perspectives on the need for urgent and far-reaching change. Richard Baldwin, Professor of International Economics at IMD Business School, was among the hundreds of leaders and experts who convened in Geneva in June to chart a new development course in a changing world.
The world of trade and development is at a turning point. The models that worked so well for so long have ended. What's important now going forward is to realize that this will be done differently. It will involve cities and services and training, not factories, ports, and technology. This change, this charting a new course, can open up the world to export-led development much broader than it has been so far.
Also at the Global Leaders Forum, Celestine Monga from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government said trade is essential for development by allowing countries to access new markets, technologies, and investment.
You look at security, terrorism, you look at unemployment, which is pushing people to extreme conflicts, a lot of that. Well, you really need to ensure that there is inclusive growth everywhere in the world, especially in developing countries. And the way to do that, I think, has to be anchored in trade. Trade is the most reliable engine for economic transformation, for inclusive economic transformation.
Despite the cascade of crises, Nardia Paleri from UNCTAD's Youth Network remains optimistic about the future.
And I feel a lot of young people discouraged, like the future will always be worse than the present. I truly don't believe that. So I think that an inclusive and sustainable future is one of the paths that we can go through, and it's really achievable because we have the knowledge, we have the technologies. We just need to stick to it to really, as a young people, I think, to make our commitment clear, to make our stance to the leaders, to make them understand that this is the future that we want.
It's not just the youth. The private sector also has an important role to play in the transformation of financial and multilateral systems. John Denton is Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce.
But the other side of competition, people forget that when you compete against each other, you actually try to improve. And we want to see more and fairer competition across the world, backed up and supported by a robust but also relevant and fit-for-purpose multilateral system to actually diminish disadvantage, to actually take people out of poverty. We want to see more of that. We want to see respect for the decision-making based on good economic principles.
Another member of the UNCTAD Youth Network, Chida Udu, said it's crucial that her generation and others get the support they need to help drive a better future.
I would like to see more support for women, more support for youth, more support for sustainable investment. We need sustainability. We need more green innovation. We need to understand that if we continue in our old ways, that we're not going to have a future for the future generation.
This week's Summit of the Future, an initiative by UN Secretary-General António Guterres, is taking concrete steps to respond to the many challenges and opportunities. Over 2 days, leaders are expected to agree on new measures and reforms covering the multilateral system, climate change, the digital world, the Sustainable Development Goals, and more. Chantaline Carpentier is head of UN Trade and Development's Trade, Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development branch.
One of the value of the Pact for the Future is that it does try to integrate all these pieces. We are still making policies in silos. There's the environmental ministry usually does the climate. Then there's the finance ministry, the trade ministry, the trade and finance, and these things are done separately. So now what we need to do is to bring all these pieces. They are interrelated. Then that should be coordinated as well. And this spillover effect should be minimized, especially when it has spillover effect on developing countries and limit their ability for development.
For Rebecca Grunspan, the Secretary-General of UN Trade and Development, stronger multilateralism is key to progress and success.
So the only way for the countries not to become victims of a system is to have a voice in the rules-based international system that we want to build together and to build it together. The issue is to be inclusive, to have a voice for those that cannot play in their advantage the power game. That's why multilateralism is important. Also in trade. The small and medium-sized countries don't have the same voice as the powerful. And so that's why governance is so important. You know, in the Summit of the Future, we are saying we need a system that will include the voices of those that were not present when the system was built.
In the interview with the UN Library just before going to the summit, Secretary-General Grunspan says the pandemic, conflicts, and the global cost of living crisis have hit developing countries especially hard.
3.3 billion people live in countries that pay more in service and the debt than the investment in education or health. So that is really the problem that we want to solve. We need a system that will be able to allow these countries to face these challenges that are systemic challenges. It's not bad behavior from their side. It's systemic shocks that put them in this position.
One big issue at the Summit of the Future is how the global financial system must be reformed to address today's realities and advance development.
Now, people are suffering, but markets are not. It's a crisis of development because countries cannot pay the debt and develop at the same time. We need a multilateral development network that will be able to allow these countries to have the financing for the Sustainable Development Goals and for the green transition. We need to allow more instruments for these, for the multilateral development banks at the global level, at the regional level, to be able to come and make the scale financing that the countries need. And third, we need the private sector to come in. And so we need a system that will lower the perception of risks in the developing world.
For Secretary-General Grunspan, it's not just about adapting our policies and actions to improve people's lives.
You know, in the world we have a deficit of trust, but also a deficit of hope. And I think that both things and that gap can be closed in the Summit of the Future. The Summit of the Future is an opportunity to build trust in the multilateral system, but also to create hope that we can do things different and better for the populations of the world.
With so many priorities, shaping a better world will not be easy. But as the Global Leaders Forum and the Summit of the Future show, there is willingness for change and energy for action. For more on this week's Summit of the Future in New York and on UN Trade and Development, visit our website at unctad.org. I'm Sarah Thomas in Geneva. Goodbye for now.